A pack of African wild dogs chased a pregnant antelope up to the buildings of the camp. One of the individuals, in the heat of the chase, didn't even notice how close he got to the humans. He is surprised that the rest of the pack isn't joining him because this is not a typical wild dog hunt. It should be done in a group. The rest of the group hesitates, but eventually also enters the area. The pack quickly tears apart the prey's belly. In a moment, the animal will be dead, and after a few minutes, only bones and scraps of skin will remain. This is how wild dogs operate. Here we see the pack attacking a lone hyena. Despite being much larger and stronger than a single wild dog, the hyena is in great danger. One moment of distraction could cause it to share the same fate as the antelope in the previous video. Another situation, this time with an even bigger predator, the king of Africa, the lion. And yet, again, the same story. Despite the undeniable strength and much greater size compared to a single wild dog, the lion's life is also at stake. African wild dogs, though small, are the most effective predators of Africa. 80% of their hunts are successful, while for lions, considered the best and strongest predators in Africa, it's only 30%. The conclusion? You probably guessed it. The strength is in numbers. Cooperation and coordination are the recipe for success. In today's episode, we will take a closer look at how African wild dogs using this simple strategy have become the terror of Africa, one of the most brutal, ruthless, and above all, effective predators. Welcome! This is a typical scenario of African wild dogs hunting a wildebeest. It starts by inducing panic in the herd and selecting a suitable target, often the weakest one. Then the wild dogs chase the frightened animal as a group. They are very persistent predators and can run over 3 miles, 5 kilometers, at maximum speeds that can reach up to 40 miles, 65 kilometers per hour. While most herbivores tire after just 2 miles, then stop and try to stand their ground. Now comes the final and decisive stage. All the wild dogs take turns biting and nipping at the prey. When the wildebeest turns towards one attacker, another strikes from the opposite side, in exactly the same way as we saw with lions or hyenas. The prey's exhaustion quickly reaches a peak, and the wild dogs only wait and intensify their attacks even more. There is only one way this can end. The animal eventually collapses, no longer able to defend itself. The wild dogs tear apart the wildebeest alive and begin their feast from the rear of its body. This scenario is exactly the same as that of a spotted hyena. Hyenas also tear apart their prey alive. Many people claim that they hate hyenas for that they are the worst animals. Similar emotions are often felt towards the Komodo dragon, which also at times doesn't bother to kill its prey before consumption. Are these animals really evil? Here we are touching philosophical and ethical issues. Certainly, we humans are exceptional in the animal kingdom in that we possess an extraordinarily developed intelligence along with strong empathy and compassion. For example, it is unthinkable for us to disembowel animals alive in a slaughterhouse. We try to minimize unnecessary pain and suffering. However, we still have a lot on our conscience, and our ethics are often simply adjusted to what is convenient. In the US and most of EU, for example, ritual slaughter is allowed, which involves bleeding the animal alive. The same goes for fur animal farming, where the animals are kept in harsh conditions on a whim. Is there less pain involved in the case of animals being torn apart alive by predators? And is raising cows in cramped boxes and extracting milk from them in such a way that the animal never sees the sky and taking away their young right after birth perhaps even more brutal? How many cows would prefer to live freely and end their lives torn apart by predators instead? We don't know. These are very interesting philosophical issues, and perhaps we'll come back to them someday. But for now, let's go back to the African wild dogs and try to look at them as objectively and scientifically as possible without unnecessary prejudices. Nature is the way it is, and this is an indisputable fact. Everyone interprets the world differently according to their own worldview and usually guided by their own convenience. African wild dogs, although they hunt similarly to hyenas, differ from them in several very important ways. First of all, African wild dogs belong to the family of canids. They are simply dogs, their English name clearly emphasizes this. Hyenas, on the other hand, despite appearances, are closer to cats than dogs, and according to the latest taxonomy, they are classified as feliforms. It is also easy to see with the naked eye that African wild dogs are much smaller than hyenas, which they cleverly compensate for by living in larger groups. In fact, African wild dogs form the largest packs of all predatory mammals in the world. Their groups can number up to 60 individuals. Such large packs can cope with huge hoofed animals such as buffaloes. Even lions have trouble with buffaloes and rarely hunt them, and usually only when the strongest males are involved in the hunt. Cooperation can work wonders, and no one understands this better than us humans. We cooperate and trade with people from all over the world, reaping enormous benefits from it. That is why we, among other things, have conquered the whole world. In large cooperating groups, social intelligence plays a very important role. This ability is what we call it in humans, but certain aspects of this intelligence are also manifested in animals. African wild dogs are at the forefront of predators in this regard, forming more numerous groups than, for example, wolves. Although wolves are slightly more intelligent than African wild dogs, the latter have more complex and refined social behaviors. African wild dogs have a developed system of greetings showing submission, subordination, and their hierarchy consists of more levels than that of wolves. These animals sleep and hunt together. Interestingly, African wild dogs, unlike wolves and lions, yield precedence in access to food to their young. Additionally, they take care of orphaned, sick, and disabled individuals. The pack provides safety for all of its members. African wild dogs feed almost exclusively on meat. They are pure predators, hunting basically anything they can kill, from small rodents and hares through birds to large herbivorous animals. The bigger the prey, the bigger the pack needed to hunt it. African wild dogs avoid forests and inhabit open areas, grassy savannas, semi-deserts, as well as acacia thickets and African bush. The dominant pair leads the pack, but the whole hierarchy of the group is quite complex. It's hard to speak of patriarchy or matriarchy here because the males and females form separate hierarchies, which seems fair as the males are slightly larger and stronger than females. People, after all, create separate categories for both sexes in sport for this very reason. Hyenas went in a different direction in this regard because it is exclusively the females that dominate, so they have a matriarchy. Females are larger than males, stronger, and even have a higher level of testosterone. They hold all of the power in the pack. Finally, let's take another look at African wild dogs hunting. This time for the largest prey that is within the range of these wild dogs, the African buffalo. The hunt starts in a standard way by circling around a herd of buffaloes, trying to create panic and chaos to locate the appropriate individual and separate it from the herd. It is worth noting that this particular pack of African wild dogs is quite small, with only about a dozen individuals. Will they be able to bring down the mighty buffalo? The first stage was executed exemplary. The individual was separated from the group, but still is a large and strong animal armed with horns that could easily trample even a lion. Additionally, the remaining buffaloes try to defend their herd member, and this strategy often succeeds. Buffaloes sometimes manage to rescue a member of their group even from confrontations with lions or hyenas. However, this time the wild dogs triumph. They understand each other and cooperate perfectly. As some of the group bites the victim trying to tire it out, the other part effectively scares off the other buffaloes. With each passing second, the buffalo weakens and finally the hammer falls. Small wild dogs, half the weight of hyenas or wolves, bring down one of the largest, most dangerous and strongest animals of the African continent, the African buffalo. Wild African dogs, also known as painted dogs, demonstrate that in nature not only strength counts, but also intelligence, cunning, and above all, cooperation. Perhaps no one understands this better than Homo sapiens, an animal that at first glance seems defenseless because it lacks large fangs, strength, or claws, but is able to cooperate brilliantly. That's all for today. Thanks. Bye.